Ooh, University of Michigan head coach. Hello? Yeah, Coach Moore. Hey, how you doing? Oh, not so well. Yeah, two losses. I understand. And USC. Yeah. Hey, no, no, no. Don't do anything stupid. No, it's okay. You guys, no. Listen. You don't play this weekend, so you can't lose. You feel much better. Okay, all right. Hey, it's week 7.
One failed comeback away from losing the house, the mortgage, and the 401k. I
Yeah,
just want to say
I,
that.
I, I
What game?
the Texas Tech game.
The Miami game. No,
Oh,
Miami. I
Oh
said on
well,
air last
well.
week that if my that I was so confident they'd win, I'd put the house, the mortgage, and the 401k on it. And Jordan said, "You don't have a 401k."
Maybe I should. Well, okay. Are y'all ready?
let's talk about it. We'll get to it. We'll
Yeah.
get to it.
So, hello everybody. Welcome to week number 7 of the Seeker Sports Podcast. I am Seeker Sports. As always, I have with me Jordan, and I have Didster. Welcome, guys.
Going.
I mean,
Glad to be back.
I'm celebrating. After winning last week, I said I would win. By the way, roll the clip.
You're picking the Red Raiders to win this game. They're
Thank
four
you.
and one. They're not a bad team.
Thank you.
But 10 points on the Red Raiders. It's even worse than me putting the 401k on the Hurricanes.
I agree.
I
So
I
much
just
more.
I can't get behind
Well,
10
guess
points
what?
on the Red
Guess what? It's a
Raiders.
10 o'clock game. Oh, so as you can see, I called it everything last week. Let's first, before we get into the big thing, right? Let's talk about the Miami game. I think Miami disappointed. I figured Miami would steamroll, but it didn't happen. So it is whatever. What do you? I mean, how do you feel about it? I mean, are they that good? The other team? I mean, is Miami that bad?
Well, we've already seen a lot of teams, especially with these expanded conferences now. I mean, you've got pretty much all four conferences expand all the way to the west and then all the way to the east. And so what you're getting now is a lot of teams that have to go coast to coast. And that flight, for anyone who's done it or done even like a halfway across the country flight, it's not easy. And most of the teams that have done a coast to coast flight so far, they've lost. And I think that has a big factor in why that game was so close. I mean,
So
Miami
you're
having to
saying
go
player
all the way
fatigue
out there. I think.
plays a part in how the game is played?
I mean, I I don't. I mean, I wouldn't have thought so, but based on the results so far this season, I think that's certainly a factor. I mean, you saw it. We're gonna talk about Washington here in a second, but the week before they went coast to coast, across the from west to
Yeah,
east coast and lost to freaking Rutgers.
yeah.
You know what I mean? And then they come back and thoroughly
I
dominated Michigan. It's just who then they themselves had to go east to west. So I think that's a big factor in all this, and I think it's something that we're gonna have to pay attention to as the year goes on.
Well, Didster put the house, the mortgage, whatever, the 401k on this game. Tell us what happened here. I mean, you were willing to bet the world.
It's a lot of kind of like Jordan just said, the new conference realignment, the travel, it's a lot and it's different. I've been doing pick'em, we've all done pick'em for many years, and the conferences haven't had a change like this since we've done it. A lot of these teams, they're playing teams they've played for years, traveling to schools that they've traveled to for years. But these are new matchups, and they're not just your typical non-conference travel money game. I mean, this is a conference matchup. I was freaking out. I was back home with some friends, and it's an okay week for me as far as my picks went. And I was like, 10 game, night game, it's gonna go well for me. And
Yeah.
before I know it, Cal was up by like 3 scores, and I actually didn't even watch the end of the game. And I checked at the end of the night, and I was like, holy cow! I will say, Cam Ward might. I think Ashton Jonty is the favorite for Heisman. I think Cam Ward's probably number two, and I think a comeback like that probably helps your Heisman case a heck of a lot.
It does because you have to have a game in there that's at least somewhat trouble. I mean, if Miami just walks through the season, I think he's good. But also if they show some rough waters along the way. So that's a very good point. So, all right. Well, we're coming up on this next week, and it's time for our picks. This week, I'll be honest with you, I'm not as confident. Game number one is Arizona at, lo and behold, BYU. Number 14, Brigham Young University. They are 5 and 0. 95% of people, and again, we do this show late in the week, right? So 95% pick BYU. I'm picking BYU.
I'm also going to go BYU. Hey, before you went through all that, you're not super confident in it. And I said last week, I love Fafita. I love McMillan. A huge McMillan. DNA, I does Arizona team good. Had a tough schedule. The mark of a good team is if you can beat those tough teams. And, they've played Kansas State and they lost to Texas Tech last week. BYU beat a really good Kansas State a few weeks back. And all of their wins have been in pretty dominant fashion for the most part. Going into Utah, into BYU, I think BYU is going to take a hold of this one pretty easily.
I got you, Jordan. What do you think?
Gosh dang it! All the technical difficulties. This is a stand-on business play for me this week, guys. I'm picking Arizona to win the game.
What?
I think they're going to go into BYU
Are you doing this for
and win.
content?
Let me tell you why. Let me tell you why. No, this is stand-on business play.
Ugh.
I don't think BYU is a good team. I don't think they're a good team. This was a team that was projected to finish at the bottom of the Big 12 to start the year. This is a
I
team
know.
that caught Kansas State at the worst time, and because of that win, they're seen as a lot better than they are. And that Baylor game a couple weeks ago did not impress me at all. They got up in a weird college football beginning to a game. Baylor came back and probably should have beaten them. I'm going to pick Arizona, who, with Ditster just mentioned, Noah Fafita, Tedoroto, or McMillan. Their defense is actually playing a lot better than people want to give them credit for. I know they lost to Texas Tech last week. Shout out to Seacruz for that pick that we all made fun of him for. But I will say, I think Arizona's going to 1 p.m. as opposed to being a night game. So I'm going to take Arizona to win in my upset of the week. This is my number one game, so
All
I'm
right.
not like ultra confident.
Okay.
But I give me the Wildcats.
All right. Well, I guess if it's your 1 point game, you can, but you're definitely not moving it higher than
And again,
that.
I'm just not. I just don't think BYU is as good as their ranking or anywhere close.
Okay. Well, it is what it is. I mean, I'm not going to say, but Texas Tech was for real, and I get it that it was a big game. Ditster, you're cutting out quite a bit. I'm not sure why the video, but Iowa State at West Virginia. So Iowa State is 5 and 0, and I'm going with the undefeateds. At some point, not everyone can stay undefeated, but at West Virginia is better than like, let's just say we all pick BYU, but Jordan, and he wants to go against the grain here, so he'll be part of the 5%. I'm going to go with Iowa State versus West Virginia. They are ranked number 11. They are 5 and 0, and with Iowa State making their way as a leading school in the Big 12, I think Iowa State is going to go into West Virginia, which is tough because that stadium's tough to play in. It's always tough to go from Iowa to West Virginia and do well. Um, but I got Iowa State here. Now, I'm not going to pick a spread. I'm not going to pick a this or that. But I'm going to say straight up Iowa State's going to win this game.
Now that you mentioned that, I am going to look at the spread for this game because I don't know what it is, and I feel like I might be a little too confident picking Iowa State. But like you, I also have this as my two game. West Virginia just beat the crap out of Oklahoma State last week, and one of the more
They
surprising
did.
results of last week. Obviously, there was a lot of surprising results last week, but in
That's one of the
terms of
games that I
games
missed.
that
Oh,
flew
I
under the
was
radar,
so
I think
mad. Mike Gundy let me down.
yeah, and it was never, and that game was never close either. West Virginia dominated from start to finish. So, but I do like Iowa State's going outside, other than, or excuse me, opposite of BYU, I actually do think Iowa State's a good team. So go ahead and give me the Cyclones.
Wow.
I'm also taking the Cyclones here, and kind of like you guys, it's my four game. Not super confident. I'm somewhat confident. I actually do think the Cyclones are a good team, and I think mainly what gets them by is that defense. I think they've had a shutout this year. They have their slip ups, but as every team does. And West Virginia, that was a shocking win at Oklahoma State, but I think maybe that just showed us Oklahoma State isn't that great of a team. They've had some tough weeks the past few weeks, and their hot start, and by hot start, I think they were 3-0 maybe. I think they're just getting exposed. West Virginia barely scraped by Kansas 2 weeks ago. I don't think they're great, but as we've said, it's hard to travel halfway across the country. As great as I think Iowa State is, I don't think they're that head above heels over West Virginia. So I think it could be close, but I'm still taking the Cyclones.
All right. We got split picks again. Okay, Washington State at Fresno State. Fresno State has a near and dear place in my heart. There was a time many, many years ago when NCAA college football came out, and I one of my dynasties was Fresno State Bulldogs. And but the thing is that they're a little bit overrated when it comes to Division One FBS football. I've got Washington State all the way in this one. I think they're. I mean, I will call this one. I'm going to say Washington State's going to go into Fresno State and dominate like 42-14, something like that, give or take a few scores.
Oh, I wasn't gonna say dominate, but I do like Washington State as well in this game. I like their quarterback John Mateer. He's their leading passer and rusher, believe it or not, so far this season. I think he's going to carry them to a victory over a Fresno State team that I think we all thought was going to be a little bit better after playing tight with Michigan early on. But as we saw, maybe the fact that they let Michigan win by 20 ended up being maybe a bad thing. And then last week, UNLV beat the crap out of them after all the controversy they had,
Yeah,
59-20.
what a
So
surprise!
give me Washington State.
I'm surprised that UNLV wasn't a pick'em game based on that information. Like to see UNLV do what
Yeah.
they did. I mean, it's crazy.
Like Washington State here. Fresno State sucks,
What?
and
They, you said they
part of
suck. Why do you say they suck? I
part,
mean, they're 3 and
so
2.
part of why I'm wearing this today. Michigan's had some questionable actions in the past couple of years as far as scandal. They have yet to really receive punishment, but I like to think I'm having the worst punishment of all today
Oh,
by having to wear this. Um,
questionable. Okay, I'm so sorry you had me at questionable. I mean,
Michigan is not a good football team, and like Jordan said, in the first week they kind of had us. It's like the meme you see on social media. They had us in the first half, not gonna lie, and they did. And that was the last time they had us was the first half of week one. Washington State is really tested. They went at Boise State last week, and the score didn't look pretty. But I like Mateer. I watched a decent amount of that game, and he's a good quarterback. Really hard to
NFL draft
play at
worthy.
Boise State.
Yeah.
Could be, could be. They beat Washington, who we saw last week. Maybe they're not the greatest, but
Oh wait, wait,
they
wait,
beat
wait, wait,
Michigan.
wait. So you're
And
hold on. You're saying that Washington State is great because Washington beat Michigan.
oh, I think Washington's a competent team. Washington State was not supposed to beat Washington when they did. That was a big upset that week. I mean, they've beat Texas Tech too. They're a tested team, and I have this as my 5 game because games like this I feel like I know less about these conferences as opposed to picking like an SEC or a
Hmm.
Big Ten game.
Okay.
So I'm not the most confident, but the only reason I think I don't have them higher is because there are other games I'm more confident in. So give me Washington State.
Well, there's a lot I could say there. Okay. So Wisconsin versus Rutgers. A part of me wants to pick Wisconsin because they've been around for so long. Rutgers has been around longer, but the bottom line is Rutgers is 4-1. They had a chance to prove themselves last week. They didn't. And I'm picking Wisconsin for the win. This is an away win. So 20% of people have picked Wisconsin to win. 80% have picked Rutgers to win. I'm going against the grain here. This is a game for me that I want to see the Badgers dominate Rutgers. And, how many teams in football start off 4 0? A lot. And Rutgers is probably in that same category. Now, if Rutgers wins and they go 5-0, I'm sorry, 5-1, then I'm proven wrong, and maybe they'll make a better bowl game. They're not going to make the Big Ten championship, but I've got the Badgers winning this game. I don't know how much by, but I'm picking the Wisconsin.
The second week in a row, I'm the only person who picked Rutgers last week against Nebraska. And listen, it was an ugly game. They never really had a shot to win, but their defense played well. Nebraska only scored 14 points. So I'm going to take Rutgers to win again this week. And against the Wisconsin team that, listen, we've talked about it at length from this podcast. I'm not convinced they're headed in a good direction. I think Rutgers is headed in the right direction. And so because it's at home, because Rutgers is coming off a loss, they're going to need a bounce back. Wisconsin beat the crap out of Purdue. I don't think I really learned much about Wisconsin after that game. Go ahead and give me the Scarlet Knights.
Okay.
Jordan, you're not going to be alone this week. I'm also going to take the Scarlet Knights in this one, and I'm fairly confident. The thing about what these teams have in common is they both have good defenses. I'd give it the edge to Rutgers, but they have solid defenses. But where Rutgers really draws the line is that offense. I like Calic Manis and I like Monagai, and
But
the
hold
thing
on, but
about
hold on. They couldn't do it versus Nebraska. What makes you think they're going to do it versus Wisconsin?
Well, sneak peek to another pick that we have this week, but Nebraska held Colorado to 10 points.
So you're
Look at
saying
what Colorado's
Nebraska's
done since
defense
then.
is
So I
better
think
than their
Nebraska
offense?
has a legitimately. I think Nebraska has a really good defense
Okay.
this year.
Fair
And I
enough.
think they've
Fair
proven
enough.
that to this point.
But we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, I agree. I think Nebraska's underrated, and I think as much hype as they've gotten around their true freshman quarterback situation, their defense is getting overshadowed, and they're a good team. And Rutgers, they kind of got smacked, but it wasn't like a bloodbath. That said, you're going into Rutgers, and in college football, when you lose a game like they did, are undefeated, lost that game, they're gonna have a fire under them. So I'm gonna take Rutgers in this one.
Okay. So I think they're going to have a hangover and lose. Okay. Penn State at USC. One of the big games. Unfortunately, it's not a top 25 matchup because USA just, they couldn't pull it together. So I've got Penn State in this game. They're 5-0, number 4. So if the college football playoff ended today, you got Penn State and Ohio State in there. And Oregon. Bottom line is Penn State is going to win this game. Uh, I don't know, maybe by 1 touchdown, maybe by 4, but I think Penn State's going to win it. And the Penn State staff is, I think, leaps and bounds ahead of USC.
Yeah, I was hoping this game would be a little bit bigger from a national
It could
perspective,
have
given
been,
that
yeah,
USC dropping the ball in Minnesota last week. I mean, good gracious.
hilarious,
Some guys will just never change. Lincoln Riley
hilarious.
will never change. He will never be able to field a team that is good on the defensive line. He just won't. And they let Minnesota, who we've talked about, lost to freaking North Carolina in week 1. That's the same North Carolina who let James Madison score 70 points. So
Yep.
that's James Madison without their good coach who's now at Indiana, and look at what Indiana's doing. So if that's any sort of weird transitive property thing I just made up there,
Yeah,
hopefully you followed that
it's a good
to
point.
get to where I'm going here.
Yeah,
I think Penn
absolutely.
State's gonna beat the absolute, what,
Yeah.
out of USC, just because I think they're gonna destroy them on the line of scrimmage. I think Penn State. I'm gonna make a bold prediction here, and I don't know how this is gonna happen. I'm gonna make a bold prediction that Penn State is going to run. They're gonna do what Michigan did versus USC. They're gonna run for 300 plus yards in this game. They're going to absolutely pound USC because USC, they're just soft. They're just
Yeah.
soft.
They are pretty soft. I agree.
I might move that to my 10
I just
game,
want to.
honestly. I'm feeling really confident about that.
That'd be a good one for a 10.
It wasn't my 8.
I'd
Now
like
I'm
to
moving
say
it to- I
first
just
and
moved it to
foremost,
10.
Minnesota is a good football team. Don't attack me.
Well, when you're hold on, I will attack you. When you're a Michigan
Minnesota.
fan, everyone else is good. I don't know.
Right.
Okay, well,
Right.
we
Yeah.
beat.
Under that logic,
Regardless.
Arkansas State's a good football team.
Regardless, Minnesota has shown improvement, and you mentioned in week 1 they lost to a North Carolina team that has proven to not be great. College football and all sports is about change, is about adapting, it's about improving. A week 1 you don't know where you stand. Week 1 USC was an underdog against an LSU team, still in the top. What are they, 13? I think USC won that game. Everyone thought USC was legit. Everyone thought Miller Moss might be it. Look at them now, right? They lost to a Michigan team that clearly isn't that great. And they lost to a Minnesota team that lost to Michigan. Maybe USC just is not a good football team. That said, I am taking Penn State here, and I'm taking Penn State by quite a lot. They're good. They're not great. But it's kind of like I mentioned last week, and I don't want to give away too much of future picks. Ohio State is in a tier of their own in the Big Ten right now. And Penn State, like I said, I don't think they're super spectacular, but they're a good football team, and they're going to thwomp USC this week. Give me 9 points on it.
Okay. All right, we got Cal at Pittsburgh. So this is my upset pick of the week. I've got Cal after struggling last week. I believe that they're going to go into Pittsburgh. And the reason I say this is because I've been alive for a handful of decades. And Pittsburgh has done this almost perennially. For those of you that don't know, perennial in the plant world means year after year. Year after year, Pittsburgh has won some. Pittsburgh is kind of the Minnesota, kind of the Wisconsin, kind of the Northwestern. They might have a year where they're 10-2, 8-4, 9-3, and they do well in their conference. But in that 10-2, 9-3, 8-4, they have a game where they royally mess up. And I believe this is the game where Cal flies all the way across the country and puts a W on Pitt.
Yeah, no, I couldn't disagree more. I think Pittsburgh is going to maybe not roll Cal in this game, but I think Pittsburgh is going to win. And what we talked about at the beginning of the show, teams going West Coast to East Coast. Cal just played the Super Bowl last week and lost. I mean, they have to be devastated given what just happened. I'm going to take Pitt. I'm going to take them big. I was really impressed with what Pitt did last week against North Carolina. Again, North Carolina team that I don't think is very good.
But North Carolina is
But-
not good.
No, but they could have easily lost that game, and it was a tough spot. So I really like Pitt coming home against a Cal team that is going to be, emotionally and probably physically exhausted as well.
They've
So,
got
give me
they've
Pitt.
got to get vengeance. Okay, Didster.
Lost to Florida State. Let's not forget that. Florida State is the
Yeah, they did.
laughing stock of the college football world right now. They lost to Boston College and
Memphis.
I'm blanking who they lose to in week 2.
Memphis.
They lost to I don't remember. They're whoever they lost to in the beginning. Supposed to beat
Tech.
them. Started out the year Georgia Tech. That's right.
Yeah.
Started out the year ranked number 10. Suck. And then they lost again last week. If you lose to Florida State, you are not a good football team. Now Pittsburgh, on the other hand, their downfall this year is going to be their defense. I like their offense. I like is it Eli Holstein, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
But their defense ain't great. However, they have played some good teams this year. They have won. They are at home against a struggling Cal team. I want 10 points on this game.
All right. Well, I'm pretty good at calling upsets, and I'll just say that again, I guess this is this week's game where I'm just gonna be right, and I'm telling you, you can still change it. I'm giving you an opportunity to change your mind, both of you. Okay,
The
fine.
only thing I would change here is maybe moving it down to number 9.
So, so,
That's where I
check
have it.
so check this out. Pittsburgh barely beat North Carolina. They beat West Virginia, but they barely beat them. and West Virginia's 3-2. So I make my case. Maybe this is the clip that I roll next week. I mean,
I
okay.
hope for your sake,
I'm
I
a
hope it
believer
is.
that I'm a believer that a win is a win, a loss
Yeah,
is a
me
loss.
too. That's why I'm saying Cal's going to squeak one out here. All right, Ole Miss at L.
Pittsburgh's got 5 wins, and Cal's got 2 losses, and one of
That
them was
mean
to the Florida
you know
State
what?
Seminoles.
Listen, on Saturday, that means nothing. All right, Ole
All
Miss
right.
versus LSU. Ole Miss, the higher ranked team, has to go into Louisiana State University and get a win after Ole Miss's mistake. I guess. I mean, how do you? Maybe Ole Miss is the better team here, right? Because LSU has shown that they lost to USC, but like you said, changes the things. So I'm going to pick LSU here. Ole Miss, LSU. It's one of the tougher ones, but I'm going to keep it at my 8 game because it's at Louisiana State University. So I'm picking the Tigers.
Okay. So we all saw Ole Miss lose to Kentucky a couple weeks ago, right?
They Kiffin.
We haven't really
Yeah.
talked about LSU. We haven't really talked about LSU in a while. They had that big opening weekend game against USC that they lost, right? You guys mentioned that earlier. Let's take a look at some of LSU's performances since then. What?
I was going to say, the game that when they beat USC, or I'm sorry, when USC beat them, that was the best I had seen LSU play this year. I'm just going to say right there. And I
Yeah.
don't know what happened, but it was a great game in week number 1. I thought LSU looked really good. Unfortunately, it fell, but it's the same team. I think USC just had it in them.
So it's early in the season, but we have a common opponent for both of these teams. Both of these teams have played South Carolina. Last week, Ole Miss went into South Carolina, smoked them for all intents and purposes. Now, Ole Miss's offense has been pretty poor so far this season, but their defense is elite, I think. They only allowed 3 points to a South Carolina team that got all their players back, and I thought South Carolina had a legit shot to win that game. LSU, on the other hand, went to South Carolina in week 3. I thought South Carolina should win that game by multiple scores. And next week, they played UCLA, won that game by 17. You know what the score was when Indiana played UCLA earlier this year?
Yeah, it was ridiculous.
42-13. I think this LSU team is very similar to USC. I think those two teams, I think, were very overrated to start the season. I'm not a believer in LSU at all. I know this is at home. The only thing that's keeping me from having this higher on my board, I have it as my 4 game, is just that LSU is at home, and I think that matters, especially in the SEC. But I'm taking Ole Miss to win this game in a big bounce back spot for them. The
Wow.
country's pretty split on this right now. It's 58-42.
Yeah.
But I think Ole Miss and their defense are gonna, do enough to hold LSU down. I think Ole Miss is finally gonna have a breakout game offensively, given how poor I think LSU's defense is.
I kind of hate this game,
Welcome to College Pick'em.
and say it not because I think it's hard to pick, and I'm picking LSU. I say it because both of these teams are not that good. And if you look at their schedules, Miss has not played a real team yet this year, except maybe Kentucky.
Hey, Kentucky's for real.
LSU has not
Kentucky
played.
is. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
They're better than we thought, but I think there's been some luck involved in their season. LSU ain't played a real team since USC, and at this point, I don't even know how real I think they are. With all that said, I think what's drawing me towards LSU, the fact that it's at home and it's
Yeah.
hard to play at LSU Stadium, but I don't think Jackson Dart is that good this year. I think Garrett Nussmeier has looked pretty good. The kicker here is every year, I think every team has one statement game. Statement game can be a win or it can be a loss. For Ole Miss, I think they made their statement game. Lost that game to Kentucky, and it was at home, which is the worst part about that loss for them. Their statement was, yeah, you're all right, but you're not that good. LSU has not had that statement game yet. That USC game was not a statement game. They haven't had that statement game. That has to happen now. 13, they're right on the cusp of being in the top 12 for the college football playoff. Need that win now, or it's never going to happen. I think LSU gets a fire lit under their butt. I think Ole Miss walks in. It's probably a close game. I have it as my one, but I like LSU here.
Well, the SEC is wide open, and we can talk about that later. But I mean, for whoever's going to get second place, I don't see Texas losing. There's a chance they can. But you're saying LSU at number 13. Yeah, they have to. So this is a game where Ole Miss and LSU have to win. If either team wants to be top 10 for the rest of the season, it's one or the other. I may move this to my one game now that I think about it, but Kansas State at Colorado.
Absolutely.
Uh, Surprise, surprise, Colorado is 4-1. Uh, Kansas State is also 4-1, and Kansas State has a much better program than Colorado. C. Cruz is picking Kansas State to win at Colorado. I can't wait to see them go down. If there's one team that I like to see lose, it's Colorado. Not because I hate Coach Prime, not because I hate the Buffaloes, not because I hate Colorado. It's because I hate the fact that in 2023, the media was so big on Colorado, it made me think, oh, they're not going to be any good. Why are we doing this? It was all about the money. And you know what? College football is becoming more and more all about the money, but right now it's still real sports, and I'm picking Kansas State to beat Colorado in primetime fashion. No pun intended. Kansas State's going to beat Colorado by at least 2 scores.
I like my prediction is the same as yours, except I'm actually terrified that Colorado is going to win this game, and I'm so terrified that I put it down at 1 point. The fact that it's at Colorado scares me, but the reason I'm still going to go with Kansas State is I think they mirror a lot of the teams that would give Colorado trouble. Now, I would have said the same thing about UCF when we saw what happened there. But let's not act like, okay, let's not fall to recency bias here. Let's not like Colorado's first few games didn't exist when they struggled with North Dakota State, who the Salukis are about to play this week. You probably get trounced. They struggled at Colorado State to score. They should have lost to Baylor if not for a last-minute Hail Mary, right?
Yeah.
So like I think that 4-1 is a little tainted. Again, that last win against UCF is going to throw a lot of people off.
It is.
So I'm going to take K-State to win, but again, because it's at Colorado and because they are so talented at the quarterback position and with their receivers, I think it's going to be a really, really fun watch and a really, really good game.
It's going to be a great game. It's on at night. Everyone's going to be watching. The lights are going to be on. It's going to be great.
If you had asked me a year ago what I thought of the Colorado Buffaloes, I would have said I did not like them. Prime was annoying, is still annoying. Shadur can be pretty annoying. Travis Hunter's not that bad. There's something that I think it's just part of human nature when a player gets as much hype as he does. And don't get me wrong, he's great. It's just you just want to hate him, you want to dislike him. Colorado has been dug so far into that hole. They're actually now like the underdog.
Mm.
And Kansas State, I think, is overrated. I love Avery Johnson. He's so fun to watch. If you
Wait,
look at their schedule,
you said
you
they're
know, they
overrated?
yes, I did. They had a great win against Arizona. Shocked then. Now I question, is Arizona that good? They went at BYU and got smacked. I think BYU is good, so that lines up. They spanked an Oklahoma State team that, again, I don't think's that great. So really, how good is their 4-1 record? I don't know. Colorado lately, again, I know it's recency bias. Defense looks better, and they're running the ball well. It wasn't just the shitter show in their last win. I think that makes a huge difference. And honestly, if Colorado wants a shot to stay in the realm of relevance for the rest of this season, this has got to be their win. Taking Colorado in this one at my 2-point game.
That's not a bad pick. I mean, it is, as far as like the matchup predictor on ESPN, it is almost 50%. But here's the deal: Vegas has Kansas State minus 190. That means that Vegas knows something. And I would say when I'm iffy on whether a team will win, sometimes when the odds are like that, I look at the stats. The truth is that Kansas State's defense is a lot better. Now, Shador Sanders has thrown for 14 touchdowns this year, but that's because they are a pass heavy offense. That happens, and Kansas State's going to bring it to them. I hope that Kansas State stays in the top 25. If they lose to Colorado, they deserve to be out, and Colorado should be in the top 25 at 5-1. That's the bottom line. Okay, we're going to talk about this now. We're going to skip it in the Big Ten talk, but here we go. Ohio State Buckeyes travel all the way to the West Coast, where there's no hurricanes, and they, no pun intended, and they're
Boy.
going to
There was hurricanes. They almost lost.
they are going to lose to Oregon. Now, in the beginning of the year, when I went over to Ohio State's prediction, right? I predicted that Ohio State would be 12-0. But after watching both teams play for a handful of weeks, I believe that Oregon is the better team here. And I think Oregon has a better quarterback, number one. I think Oregon has just as stable as a coach as Ryan Day for Ohio State. I think Oregon's been through the thick of it already this year. They've had to play some good games. They've been in primetime TV. Ohio State last week was their first test. But really, this is the real test to see who's going to win the Big Ten. So we could see an Oregon Ohio State rematch because they don't play each other again, right? So both teams could be 11-1 or 1-12-0 and 11-1. Jordan, I'm going against Ohio State here. I'm picking Oregon to win this game. This is my 10 game also.
Okay, let's do a little trivia here. Oregon, did they play Boise State earlier this year? Let's ask Didster.
I want to say yes. It was early in the year.
Yes. Do you remember how that game ended up?
Obviously, Oregon won. I guess I don't remember the score. Please enlighten me.
OT times 2?
Boise State was winning that game in the fourth quarter, 34-27. Then Oregon needed a kickoff return touchdown and a game-winning field goal to beat them. Now, who does Boise State have in their backfield? The best player in the game right now, Ashton Jeanty, right? Well, he's the best running back in America.
In the league.
The second and third best running backs in America. Right. Yeah. The second and third best running backs in America play at Ohio State.
Yeah.
And so I think when you've got that two-headed monster in the backfield with Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins, we've already seen Oregon struggle.
Can I interrupt you here?
Oregon likes to throw the ball away in the red zone. Dylan Gabriel has been a turnover machine at times this season, and I'm confident Ohio State's going to go in there and win this game. And C. Cruz, I'll let you take it in a second, but earlier you were talking about how Kansas State, you looked at the line, you're like, okay, I think Vegas thinks they're going to win this game. Well, before the season started, Oregon was favored in this game because they had already projected it out, right? Well, now that line has moved completely the opposite direction, and now Ohio State's favored by 3.5, depending on where you look.
That's not okay.
I'm confident in Ohio State.
3.5
I think
is
they're going to win this
the
game.
same as even in my mind.
But that's a 4-point swing from where it was at the beginning of the season. And you talked about because you've watched both teams, you think
I have.
Oregon's going to win. I don't know how you could watch both teams play and think that think that Oregon's the better team. So that I don't understand. So I'm going to take Ohio State to win the game.
Well, okay. So before Didster speaks,
I thought I would be more nervous.
Before Didster speaks, right? I'm going to say this: Akron, Western Michigan, Marshall, Sparty, Iowa.
What do you think about
That's who Ohio State has played. They're untested.
What do you think about
Now-
Idaho?
But now,
Didster knows what I'm talking about when I ask that question. What do you think about Idaho? FCS team. What do you think about them?
well,
I mean,
because
Oregon only beat them by
beat
10.
by 10, but they played
Hey,
Boise State and won.
What are the scores to all of Ohio State's games? They've murdered everybody that they've played against.
I mean, Oregon scored
Including
49
Michigan
points
State.
against Oregon State. I get it. Oregon State's not good, but they beat. Okay, so maybe this is both
Who?
teams. Maybe this is both teams' first big test. But they beat Boise State.
Yeah.
Boise State's good. Boise State is not a slouch team. Iowa is
by
a slouch
3
team.
at home.
Iowa is a slouch team, and you beat them by a couple touchdowns. So this is going to be a great game. But there's no. What I'm trying to say is there's no reason other than the fact that the best running backs in the nation are on Ohio State. I get that, but this is at Oregon, and as you said, teams have not traveled well this year. I don't care which conference it is. So that's why I'm picking Oregon. All right, Dister.
Take the tie.
Last week I said this and it bit me, so I know I'm gonna regret saying this again. I think this game, as your 10 game, no matter who you pick, you either have to be trolling or you have to be
I'm not
delusional.
trolling.
I don't think either of those are traits you want to have. But regardless, I said last week on the podcast when we went through our Big Ten picks, Ohio State,
Roll
think
it.
they're great. I like Ohio State. I want them to lose every week, but they are so fun to watch because year in year, perennially,
Oh.
they put together a heck of a team, which is why the Michigan wins the last 3 years felt better. But regardless, Ohio State is always like, you could say they're the best team every year. But I said this year, they had not been yet tested yet. I needed to see how they played against Iowa. They played very well. For me, that was all I needed to see. I don't think Oregon's great. I think Dylan Gabriel is super overrated. He's probably better than Will Howard. Like, Will Howard's not supposed to be some stud. Dylan Gabriel came into this Oregon team. People were thinking he was, hot transfer in the transfer portal.
And
Ohio State
he
has played
is
really well.
And he is.
No, he's not. He's good. He's good. He's not great.
Oh, after this week,
Ohio
you will
State has
just
played very
find out.
well.
Watch my Chrome Claw Award videos. I'm telling you, I didn't even put Will Howard on the radar. Dylan Gabriel is going to have a game of games.
Hey,
It's
and you know what? Will Howard watched that, and that motivated him. So,
Chrome Claw.
no, and let me just
I
say
will
this
say-
before we move on. Go ahead, Dister.
That's not. I don't get to.
You,
mention
you get
anyone.
the mic. You get the mic.
No, go ahead.
When talking about similar games, Flash, you did that for a few people a couple games ago. Played Michigan State very similarly. I'll grant that. But that said, Ohio State has a way of playing up to their competition. And the only reason I had this as my sixth game, picking Ohio State, because I have to give Oregon some respect. They're third in the nation. They're undefeated. On the other flip side of the country, Oregon wins, I'm not going to be shocked.
Thank you.
But if they win by a lot, I will be shocked. Whereas any win for Ohio State is going to be not surprising. So I'll take Ohio State at
So
six.
you're saying if you weren't giving Oregon respect, you'd have higher.
Well,
Yeah, probably, but not much higher. Maybe 7 or 8.
Yeah.
let me ask you
Yeah,
this.
And just before we move on,
Well, so let me ask you this. If
I was just gonna say, okay,
if Oregon beats Ohio State, I don't care if it's by 1 point or 30, is Ohio State's season over because of who they have to play?
not even close. No, not even
Okay.
close.
If
I'll just
if I
put this
may,
out there.
go ahead.
Yeah, third time's the charm. Let me get this out real quick. I've been waiting to get this out. If Ohio State loses, if Oregon wins this game, I will not be shocked at all. I don't think they're going to win this game. I don't think anything I've watched
don't
this year tells
want
me
them
that
to
they're
win this
going
game.
to. No, I don't think they're going to win this game. But it wouldn't shock me if they did because they have enough talent to do so. Ohio State has a couple of weaknesses that Oregon could exploit. We just haven't seen Oregon do that to any other team this year. So I don't know why they would start doing that to Ohio State out of nowhere. But that's really all it is. It's really just what I've seen so far. There's nothing that makes me think Oregon win this game. You go back to the Notre Dame game last year that Ohio State played. There were reasons to believe Notre Dame could win that game heading into that matchup.
Absolutely.
And they pretty much did. I mean, if they had the proper number of guys on the field, maybe they would have won that game. So,
Yeah, that's
I'm
true.
Gonna take Ohio State just purely based off of what we've seen so far this season. I'm going Buckeyes.
Gotcha. Well, you bring up the Notre Dame Ohio State game last year, and I remember ETN having a. I mean, he was a great running back, and unfortunately, he was on the Irish. But I
Who?
mean, ETN for Notre Dame.
Oh, like
He's it.
estimate,
He's
estimate, not ETN.
or yeah. Uh,
Close
Est,
enough.
Close enough. Close
Estime,
enough.
and he reminded
Hmm.
me of an Ohio State running back. Several of them. There were a couple of them that were really good, and what a game that was. I mean, let's hope. I mean, I really hope
Hmm.
again because of Pick'em. I want Oregon to win, but this should be the greatest game of the year so far. I mean, as far as implication goes. So, big time Saturday. I can't wait for Saturday night. Okay, moving on to the Big
And the
Ten.
other thing about this game, 10-second comment. Whoever
Ish.
loses this game is not dead in the water.
No,
This is a good loss to hang your hat on.
no, this is the Big
Yeah.
Ten's version of Georgia versus Alabama or Texas
Hmm.
versus, I don't think that.
Are we get?
Say what?
No, go ahead.
I don't think that the Big Ten has a big three like the SEC. So I think this is going to be a
Are we?
championship rematch. Of Washington at Iowa. I've got Washington winning this game. I'm going to go with the favorite here, percentage wise, because Washington and Iowa are both teams that are very volatile. And I'm going to go Washington at Iowa here for the win. What this is going to do is this is going to put Washington in a position to continue to make a Big Ten run if there's if there's two one loss teams in. And so Iowa with their losses, they're out, right? And I think that Washington's going to go in. It's not that far to travel, but Iowa just doesn't have enough offense to beat a Washington defense.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with you here. Actually, it does worry me that the college pick'em public is for Washington, but Vegas has Iowa as the favorite in this game. Um, but I love what I've seen from Washington.
Yeah.
You look at their schedule. You see their losses are at Washington State at home, who we think is a pretty good team in Washington State. They only lost that game by 5, and then obviously we talked about the coast to coast trip over to New Jersey a couple weeks ago to play Rutgers. They're sort of doing. I mean, they're doing like half of that trip this time, and against an Iowa team that just does not have any sort of semblance of an offense. I
No.
talked last week about the Michigan transfer in Washington. He had a nice touchdown catch against the Wolverines last week. I think Washington's got enough dudes to hang in there with Iowa. I think this is going to be an ugly game. I wouldn't recommend watching it if you have children in the house because it's just going to be awful. But give me the Huskies, man. Give me the Huskies. I really, really like this team, and I'm going to start tailing them probably for the rest of the season.
Okay.
I'm going to take Washington, but not like super confidently. I have it at 3, which, I mean,
You should.
I'll change it now, but
They
in
beat they
hindsight,
beat Michigan last week.
I should have changed it. I think the one thing, and this is just looking on from a Michigan fan perspective, Iowa and Michigan are not super different teams.
That's true.
They're
That's true.
questionable quarterback play. Ironically, McNamara was a Michigan quarterback, and he actually did get team to the playoffs. That said, questionable quarterback play, good run game, good defense. What Iowa might be able to get on here is that, A, they're at home. They can probably exploit Washington in similar ways that Michigan was able to. Michigan didn't look super terrible for parts of the game. The end, we had back-to-back turnovers. It's got kind of
That's
ugly.
coaching though.
Iowa's coached well, but Iowa is coached well, and I
Yeah.
think a coach could potentially see that, use that against them. That said, Washington's not a bad team. Their quarterback is better than McNamara. Their defense is pretty solid, so I'll take Washington in this one.
I got you. So we're going all three Washington. I like that.
That's one of the few games on this slate that I think all three of us had the same
No,
people.
I mean you're 100%
Mm-hmm.
correct. All right, well that wraps it up for college pick'em. We're going to go into the Big Ten talk here. We don't do a lot of explanation on the Big Ten games. Pretty much just picks rapidly here. First game is Northwestern at Maryland, and unfortunately
Oh,
this year
baby.
Northwestern cannot get anything going. They don't even know. Like I don't even want to get into it as a Northwestern fan, right? One of the few. um, and they are selling out the temporary stadium. But the bottom line is,
Practice field.
the bottom line is, Maryland is probably going to win this game. I mean, it's only a 10.5 spread, so it could go either way. But at 45.5 over under, that means neither team has any defense whatsoever, except Uline. Uline on Northwestern is probably draftable by the NFL, but um, I'm going Maryland here, unfortunately. I hope Northwestern wins.
Yeah, I'll take Maryland. Now, I did find that Northwestern Indiana game to be pretty interesting.
Oh, it's great.
Northwestern hung in there with Hoosiers, and we're gonna find out very, very soon. Actually, with Indiana's next two games, and they're both at home, so they got a pretty good draw with the schedule this year. But they play Nebraska at home, and they play Washington at home.
Yep.
We're gonna find out in those two games if Indiana's for real. I think. And
Perfect timing for a week
North
off too.
and listen, I think Northwestern's terrible. I hate to break it to you.
No, you're not breaking
They're-
anything. I don't know.
So the fact that Northwestern was able to score on them like they did, Northwestern's offense is, I mean, come on, Northwestern's offense is putrid, and
Yeah.
even they were able to put up some on Indiana. So
They
that
did.
being said, we can talk about that next week. I'm gonna take Maryland to win this game. Not super confident. I think their coaching staff's terrible, but I think Maryland has enough talent. I think they're just gonna out talent Northwestern to a win here.
Okay.
I don't want to crap on Northwestern because you shouldn't. You don't pick on the kid who's already on the ground. But I think, regardless of talent, record, whatever, because I don't think Maryland's very good. Sorry, I don't know why I said Wisconsin. Northwestern, they might sell out their practice field, but I think my high school sold out our practice field every game too. So, you know, Northwestern's had
Fair
one
enough.
away game. It was at a good program in Washington, but I don't think they're even going to know, regardless of skill, I think they're even going to know how to handle this environment being away. Maryland might run through this game, and it might simply just be because Northwestern doesn't know what to do.
Well, my heart says Northwestern, but my mind says Maryland. Next game, Washington, Iowa. We've already talked about it. Wisconsin at Rutgers. We've already talked about it. Penn State, USC. Already talked about it. Purdue at Illinois. And this is a very interesting game because Illinois, sitting where they're sitting, they have to win this game. In order for Illinois to be considered a legit team, and when they beat Nebraska, the whole nation thought they were legit. I'm going to go with Illinois. They should beat Purdue pretty handily.
Yeah, I mean, I would call this a look ahead spot for Illinois with Michigan coming to town next week, but I think Purdue is so bad that even if you are looking ahead, you're still going to find a way to beat 20. So yeah, it's kind of wild how terrible Purdue is. I got to be honest. With Wisconsin doing what they did to them last week, again, we've talked at length about Wisconsin and their troubles. This should be one of the easier wins for the Fighting Illini all season long.
I've got an opportunity to go see that Michigan Illini game next week, so
We need
I don't like Illini, but I want them to win because assuming Michigan doesn't drop from the rankings in this bye week, I think it'd be cool to see two ranked teams play each other. Only thing I'm actually going to say about the game is if Illini doesn't cover the spread of 22.5, there's a problem. So
Yeah.
take Illini.
I agree. I agree.
We've already talked about Ohio State at Oregon, and the last game on the slate is Minnesota at UCLA. With Minnesota beating a mediocre Michigan team last week, I do have them beating UCLA by quite a bit. The win over Michigan.
Minnesota did not beat Michigan. You mean USC?
I'm sorry, USC. Yeah, same thing. Michigan,
It was a
USC.
moral victory over Michigan.
Because who lost to? Okay, so I've got Minnesota winning this game. UCLA, I mean, bottom of the barrel team. Like, there's 4 teams in the Big Ten that are bottom of the barrel, and UCLA is one of them. So Minnesota has to win this game. It is at UCLA, but that doesn't mean anything.
UCLA, they defile the Rose Bowl by playing in it. Again, this is a hide your kid, hide your wife game. Do not watch it. It's going to be ugly. It's going to be terrible. But for the sake of the show, I'll take Minnesota. And I looked quickly before I made my pick here.
Yeah.
Thank the Lord that we do not have to watch Purdue play UCLA this year, because holy crap, that would be the toilet bowl of all toilet bowl games.
Yeah.
Um, I guess you could probably throw Northwestern in there too, but at least Northwestern has more than one win, um, and they do play Purdue later this year, so that'll be a crappy one too. But regardless, I mean, this is gonna be a terrible
My
game. But I think
producer's looking at
Minnesota's.
me right now saying, "How can I hear such garbage?" But whatever.
I mean, this is gonna be a terrible game. Give me Minnesota.
It's unscripted. I don't know what else to say, honestly. All right, go ahead.
Very much unscripted.
It's time for you to find a new producer. We don't like that guy very much. Minnesota's going to win, probably by a decent amount. I've mentioned throughout this podcast they're a good team, or at least I think so. And I do
It's the tournament
shed
of
some light
losers, is what it is.
on this UCLA team.
That's unbelievable.
I'm going to shed some light on this UCLA team. They've been kind of glossed over. This is a gauntlet of a schedule they've had this year. Their only win was against Hawaii. They went to Hawaii. Doesn't matter where in the country you're from. That is a heck of a trip.
Yeah, but they were excited
Hawaii
to be in
won.
Hawaii, right?
You're right. You're right. Indiana, LSU, Oregon, Penn State. Those four teams have one loss between them.
So
That's a
maybe
gaunt- now-
UCLA's a better team than we've seen. I mean, is it possible?
Ethan Garbers
What is the
stinks.
what is the
But that said, like if I hadn't looked at that, I would have thought Minnesota handily. But UCLA, like that's why the spread is what it's at. It's Minnesota by 5.
Yeah.
Because this UCLA team, if they go out and win against a questionably suspect Minnesota team, shouldn't be as big of a shock as it's going to be to the college football world.
That is
Well,
interesting.
I gotta be honest with you. I haven't really thought about that very much.
Me either. Because as soon as he said that, I looked at the spread and I was like, wait a minute.
Really, after they lost to Indiana by 29, I kind of just like put UCLA in the memory hole and really didn't think about them for a while. You make some good points. That schedule is kind of ridiculous. I'm still gonna take Minnesota to win the game. I need to see
Yeah.
it first. Though.
Yeah.
But maybe UCLA isn't as bad as we think they are. I mean, again, like you said, the gauntlet of a schedule they played. Their first game, they had to go all the way out to Hawaii, which is a lot further than most people think if you look on a map. So, you know what? I'll take your point and I'll write it down for sure. But I'm still gonna take the Gophers to win.
Wasn't enough to convince you, was it? So, Didster,
And,
you're picking UCLA to
legitimately-
win?
No,
Oh,
I'm taking
okay.
Minnesota. But I think this is one that if UCLA comes out and pulls out a victory, put Sea Crew Sports, this podcast, on the map, right? I'm just saying it shouldn't be as shocking as it probably will
Well,
be.
that's true.
And that said, like that schedule that I just belted out, I can say I think Michigan would be 1-4.
That's a good point. But they're
That's,
also
that's
So-
kind of a good point. And honestly, they all probably would have been the same scores too. Looking at it,
interesting. Maybe
So let's,
the Minnesota at UCLA game is the toughest game to pick of all the Big Ten games, besides OSU Oregon.
it's yeah, two biggest and most entertaining games this week: Ohio State, Oregon, and Minnesota, UCLA. Who
Right,
knew?
right.
Who knew?
I'll say, like, really, the only game this week in the Big Ten that I am 100% confident. Sorry, only games that I'm 100% confident on who I think will win is Illinois, Purdue, and Northwestern Maryland. Their game actually should be interesting, so it's a good slate this week.
That's true. That's
There
true.
it is.
All right, well, that wraps it up for this week's podcast. Thanks for watching if you made it this far. And hey, any last words from the two?
Praise
Go
the
Bucks.
Lord. Sorry.
Nope, all you.
Praise the Lord that the Michigan Wolverines are not stepping on the field for another 10 days.
Wow.
Never thought I'd hear that.
I can't wait to clip that.
Gonna be great to watch the Buckeyes in a real big game this week at Oregon. It's gonna be phenomenal. And like you said, neither team is out of the conversation with a loss here.
No.
I honestly think we're looking at a Big Ten championship preview. I'm going to backtrack on that because I think Penn State has a pretty
Well,
good
I was
shot.
just
So
gonna
either
say,
anyway,
what if Penn State goes
you're looking at
undefeated?
okay. Let me
Oh, this
shift. Let
game
me
has
shift my
so
comment.
many
I think both of these
implications.
teams. I think both of these teams are going to make the playoff. I'll tell you that much. So you're going to watch two playoff teams go up against each other, um, and it's similar to Georgia Alabama fashion. But I mean, with Alabama losing to Vanderbilt, it's like, well, how much did that game really tell us about either of those teams?
Right.
So I don't know. Still got a long way to go in the
Long way
season.
to go.
Even though it feels like it's moving fast, we
It
still have so
does.
much to learn. So I'm gonna go ahead and, like I said, I'm taking the Buckeyes. I'm gonna watch it and just enjoy the great college football because I don't. Again, like I said, neither of these teams are done, but I do think we're gonna learn a lot about how good they actually are. So go Bucks. We'll see you next week.
All right, and with that said,
Absolutely.
see Crew Sports. We'll see you next week. I
This is
know,
just the AP
but